Hey guys, today I am talking to Ethan Sample. Ethan actually studied abroad twice. He is now an OSU alum and he still took the time to talk to us. That was so sweet. But yeah, in this interview, we get to talk a lot about his experiences in Costa Rica and Mexico, the benefits of studying abroad in Latin America, the differences between the two places, the differences between going for a semester and going for a summer. So I think he has a lot of really valuable insight, and I hope you guys enjoy it.
The first time I studied abroad through the study abroad office was with an affiliated approved program through AIFS in San Jose, Costa Rica, and I went for the spring semester of 2018. So this was my sophomore year spring semester. Um, it was fun. I was there for the full semester, 3 months total. I took a class on marine mammal conservation of marine mammal species and like biology of them, and I took a class on mural painting and public art, and then I took a class on cultural photography, and those were the three electives that I had. But the main class that I took while I was there was a language intensive 1 month Spanish class where we learned Spanish from 8 a.m. until 12 in the afternoon. So it was 4 hours long every day for a 1 month straight, Monday through Friday. And so, yeah, it was pretty, it was good because by the time I was done, I really felt like I was at intermediate level conversation and intermediate level reading. Like everything was intermediate. So when I went, I was afraid, like I took this placement exam to see like where I was, and I was at advanced level at OSU, but there I was considered intermediate. And so they wouldn't let me take advanced classes. And that was kind of a negative experience, but my advisor made it all work out and stuff. So, and Marissa, or was her name Melissa or Marissa? Marissa Hernandez. Yeah. She used to work there and stuff. She helped out a lot in that process and stuff. But I ended up, enjoying my time. It was like after that first month, every Tuesday I had to myself, and the weekends I had to myself. So, like Costa Rica is one of those countries where like you travel 3 hours in any direction. You're in like a different kind of microbiome, microclimate sort of, and there's cloud forests, there's beaches on the Caribbean and on the Pacific. There's mountains. There's just so much to do there, and so much wildlife and plant life to see, really, that it's a really amazing experience to go to Costa Rica. Now, I chose Costa Rica because I was minoring in Spanish and I was trying to learn Spanish, and I didn't really know much about Costa Rica before going. I didn't know, this pura vida lifestyle and stuff that they talk about. But it was a place that I'll never forget in the 3 months that I lived there, and I do want to go back. And I forgot to mention that, you can go with a friend if you choose to study abroad. Like I went with my girlfriend at the time, who's now my fiance. We had been dating for a while, and we went together, and we weren't allowed to live with each other during that, but they put us close together so that way we could walk to class together, exchange all the details of our days and stuff. It was actually a really, really cool experience to be able to do that. Now, that was the first time I studied abroad. I've gone abroad a second time, and the second time was I had just finished my business Spanish class, and I was really trying to gain a strong, strong foothold in the Spanish language. And this definitely gave me an experience where I was probably the most confident and most fluent speaker out of everybody in my group, because for the most part, the kids that I went with on this affiliated approved program were basic level or intermediate level at the highest. And this was through Soul Study Abroad in Oaxaca, Mexico. I went in the summer of 2019 for 1 month, just so I could take out 2 more electives and really just gain a stronger foothold in the language. And when I got there, this was my worst experience probably ever studying abroad. Was that I was sick when I got there, so I was already sick. Like I had like a cold, going back and forth in the US and stuff, from Stillwater to Cushing throughout the break just before going because it was summer, and it happened like the week after we finished school. So I left, and I just had this cold, and it was really bad because it was really hot and dry in Oaxaca. So it was just kind of, it added to the miserableness, if that's even. But, you know, after a week and a half or 2 weeks of battling that cold while in Mexico, I was able to kind of just bounce back, and it was fine. You know, it didn't really ruin my time abroad. It kind of made the first week strenuous for sure, adapt to the, you know, just the weather and stuff there. But Mexico definitely gave me the stronger foothold in Spanish that I was like wanting. Like, you know, I was ordering taxis over the phone for kids in my classes. I was speaking to the taxis. I was getting us into, you know, the nightlife if we wanted to go hang out and stuff and go out like you're supposed to when you study abroad. You just got to be responsible about it. Um, those that month, those weeks were probably the most formative in terms of my speaking ability for Spanish. But when I got back, you know, it's one of those things, you don't use it, you lose it. I've never lost it. It's just I've gotten a little rusty. I can totally be honest and transparent about that. But Mexico, Oaxaca itself is a very diverse place. Like the state of Oaxaca has, I think, 16 different languages that are recognized as like actual
languages.
I mean, diplomatic languages, but they are languages nonetheless. You know, you have things like Nahuatl, Zapotec, and those are just like two. I can't really name much more, but there are 16 recognized languages, Spanish being one of them. There are just there's a ton of Native Mexican tribal sort of affiliation there, and you know, Mexico is just one of those places where when I went, I didn't know what to expect. But my house mom, my host families in both countries were really, really kind. I mean, when I had that cold, my house mom, like literally the first night I got there before my roommate got there, walked me to, well, I can't remember if we walked, her neighbor drove us to the store with her, and we went in, and like she was telling me like all the customs and stuff. Like, so like when you go through some of the lines at some of the superstores there are people that bag your stuff, and like you can tip them because that's sort of like how they make their money and stuff. So she was telling me all the norms and stuff and helping me out while I was sort of just like more preoccupied with this cold that I had. And she kind of made that transition sort of fluid, and like made me soup the first night, bought me like so much stuff to like help out with the cold. Even though I had my own money and stuff, like she felt like as if I was one of her own and stuff. So and that was the same way in Costa Rica, you know, like in Costa Rica, you're like a tico if you're a boy, and you're a tica if you're a girl. And so I always called her my mama tica. She always like made us food every morning. Like, I mean, the host family is the way to go, because if you don't have much experience living abroad, the host family is going to give you the best opportunity to like get the food, get the language experience, dive into just conversational sort of element. Like, for instance, Costa Rica was going through an election when we went, and yeah, and it was like that. I want to say March or April, they voted for their new president that they have now, and I just remember like all the tension. It's so different there, the political climate. I mean, like there are like we have like an elephant as the representative for the GOP, and a donkey represents, you know, the Democrats. Well, it's the same there, only they have like banners and flags. So like when the party that won the election, there were people in the streets waving flags, honking horns. I mean, it was it was like a soccer team just won a national, or like just won like a competition or something. So it was really different. And the benefit about studying abroad that everybody's going to tell you is that you get and you gain cultural understanding from understanding your own culture and how it sort of contrasts and compares to the one that you're in. But at the same time, you gain from just getting a raw experience of being abroad, not knowing where you're at, having to figure out which bus takes you where, stuff like that. Those are the experiences that are so minimal in your everyday experiences when you're abroad, but like carry the hugest value when you get back. You're like, wow, I was really able to go to the bus stop, ask for a ticket to get here by this time on this day, show up at the exact time. Like there's so many factors and like variables that go into like just being able to do something like that. And it's really cool experience to say that you got to study abroad. But Costa Rica and Mexico, I can't speak higher of those two countries. Um, Oddly enough, I will say this: out of the two countries, where I felt safest in Oaxaca, to be honest, because it was a much smaller
Really?
city, a much smaller city.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
but San Jose was much larger, and there was just there were parts where you turn around corner and stuff, and you're like, you got to be careful. In the same way in Oaxaca, but it's just smaller, so it's easily like contained. It's I really enjoyed both of my times abroad, and I would do it again. I'd go abroad in a heartbeat if I could to another Spanish-speaking country, probably in South America this time, maybe Uruguay or Colombia. There's a lot of places to go.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. And it's good to hear you say that, because a lot of our traffic in like most like countries that gather the most interest are like European countries, or people that aren't trying to learn a language feel like intimidated to go somewhere where English isn't the like primary language, even though like classes are in English. So it's nice to hear from someone that's been to places that aren't necessarily like number one on everybody's travel bucket list. But um so when you're learning Spanish in Costa Rica and Mexico, is it like different? Like I've heard that some places have like
Yeah.
different dialects, like there's slight differences.
So instead of like calling it a dialect, it's really just a difference in accent. Really, is all it
Okay.
is. Now, yes, there's a huge difference in Mexican Spanish and Costa Rican Spanish, and I'll get to that right now. So pretty much in Mexico, that's the Spanish we're used to hearing most of the time in cinema and in the U.S. That's just the Spanish that's spoken by this. That's the Spanish that's spoken by more Spanish speakers throughout the world. I think they have like one of the largest populations in Latin America and Central America, stuff like that. Costa Rica, on the other hand, is very close to South America. So they have very South American tendencies. And one of those tendencies is to do, instead of use tu for the impersonal you, they use vos as the impersonal you. So instead of saying tu tienes, like you have, you say vos tenés. So all your stem changing verbs change back to like non-stem changing, and the endings just have an accent on the last vowel. So it's really, really, it's easy, but it requires you to sort of devolve all the stuff you've learned with stem changing verbs to learn what they do. It's not hard, but they understand usted and they understand, so they're not gonna like, they'll just know that you're not from Costa Rica or from South America if you don't use vos. Using vos though is pretty cool, because if you ever like watch the show Narcos or anything like that, in the Colombian version, at least, for sure the Colombian version, you'll always hear the actor that plays Pablo Escobar and his like associates always use vos. Yes.
Okay.
So it's not vosotros, which is like ustedes from Spain, like the Spanish Spain version, but it's vos. So it's like short for vosotros. It's really weird. That's like the main difference. The second main difference you're going to see from Mexican Spanish and Costa Rican Spanish is in Costa Rica, they don't say Costa Rica. Like you're supposed to roll your R when it's the first letter in the word. In Costa Rica, they're so influenced by Western, or I wouldn't say Western, because they have a lot of European and, just tons of tourists from the U.S., that their R's are retroflexive. So they actually do this Costa Rica thing like we do with our R's. We say Costa Rica. They do Costa Rica, or they say Costa Rica. So they don't even roll their R. They just say Costa Rica. It's really weird. I think that's just an influence from like, a tourist system that's really bogged down by a bunch of U.S. English speakers. But the difference also being that Costa Rican, I think Costa Ricans, their population, 50% of it can speak, or 54% of it or something like that can speak English. So there's going to be a lot more understanding between the two. If you ever are confused, you could start speaking English and see if they know what you're saying. Whereas in Mexico, it's not rare to find a taxi driver that can speak English, but it is more difficult.
Okay. So, yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Okay. So in Costa Rica, you have like a 50-50 chance, but in Oaxaca, it's a little bit.
It's a little bit. it's a little bit more difficult, but it's still, I mean, like, you're there to speak Spanish, not to speak English. I'm just trying to give the
Yeah,
comparison
for sure.
between the two countries. But definitely, like, you're gonna have an easier time speaking English in Costa Rica because they're just huge ecotourism is what's
Yeah.
how they make their money, you know. So
Yeah, like I said, I did my exchange in Hawaii, and so obviously and even anyway, but obviously very tourism heavy. Like most of the people there on the island are there on vacation, or I don't know about most, but a lot. And even talking about it now, so like we say Hawaii and they say Hawaii, and it's almost like embarrassing for me to, you know what I mean, like when you're trying to like take on the accent of a different place and you're like, I probably sound like such a, or they're called howleys in Hawaii,
don't
is
they
the
call
like,
don't they call people from like lower 48 like the mainlanders? Yeah.
yes, they call us howleys. And so I'm always like, oh my gosh, I sound like such a howley trying to say Hawaii. But did you feel like that, like at all, trying to learn the
No,
language?
so the difference between most European languages and Spanish, for the most part, I feel like everybody wants you to learn Spanish. So like when you're going around and you're speaking it, like, and I feel like most people are like this. The key to somebody's heart is speaking their language. So if you try and you say something, so I mean, even like it's not that much, but you actually try your hardest and you actually succeed, it makes the person that you're speaking to probably so much more happy and hear their own language and stuff. And you'll see videos like that where the dude goes around speaking Mandarin randomly to people who speak Mandarin or Cantonese. He can
And
speak
they
both.
get so excited. Yeah.
Yeah, because they're like, what the heck? It's like the same thing, only it's much, much more common to see people speaking Spanish, you know? It's not a hard language to learn, but for the most part, anytime I've ever ran into a fluent native Spanish speaker, like they were always helpful and never like mean about anything, never trying to take advantage of you. They always like want to hear you speak. They always promote good conversation, trying to get you to say harder words, trying to get you to diversify your sentences. That was my house mom every night in Costa Rica and in Mexico. But, you know, everywhere you go, it's like, I don't know. Latin America is just, it's a dangerous place in some parts, but everybody's so happy and so loving. Like family is the biggest thing to life to them. And that love that keeps family inseparable sort of is like, it drives their every day. It's like, you know, like you go out and you meet somebody random, that love that they have for their family extends out to most people, you know? So they love to hear you speak Spanish. They love to talk to you. And Latin America is underrated. People don't like to travel there because all they hear in the news is violence this in Mexico and violence that, cartels here and cartels that, narco trafficking here and human trafficking that, you know? So it's the media that kind of controls and perpetuates that perspective on Latin America. But if you ever go, like it annihilates all other forms of food around the world. And the people too, the dance, the culture, like the dances, the cultures,
For sure.
how diverse they are, the history. Like, I mean, in Mexico, I took a Mexican civilization course that taught us like sort of the history of Mexico from like, you know, ice bridge theory all the way to like now. And I took a U.S.-Mexico relations course, and that taught me like all of the history between U.S. and Mexico. So like, I really feel like I have sort of an understanding between Mexico and U.S., but at the same time, like a lot of the research I've done in my normal every day from like even in my job, I still do research, and it's like on Central American migration. So I have a pretty nuanced understanding of the things that go on in the region, but at the same time, like it's up to the individual. If they want to learn Spanish, I recommend going to Latin America over Spain because you're going to always use that Spanish and that accent and that sort of pace when you speak more often. But you know, it's up to the person studying abroad. I'm always going to be a big, huge proponent of going to Central and Latin America.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think it's always interesting to learn about the United States from not the United States. I took a Hawaiian studies class that talked about, which obviously in the US now, but like there was a whole unit on the illegal annexation of Hawaii. And that was super interesting. I'd obviously never heard of that before, and I'm sure you had that experience in your like Mexican relations classes, being like, that is not how we learned about the Alamo.
So I went to a public university in Mexico. College is free unless it's private university. And I mean, I say free, there is still some corruption that goes on in the system of like public universities and stuff. But for the most part, my professors were very like in the middle, moderate in terms of their understanding and their telling of the story, like of history. Like when my professor would talk to me, he would, he would crack jokes to me because he knew I could understand it a lot, but things that would go over their head and stuff, the other students in my class, like he would always teach history from the perspective of somebody rational. So like he'd be like, yeah, Santa Anna messed up when he marched on the Alamo, and then after marching and massacring everybody, not keeping a post there, it just left it for the Americans to take back over. Like he actually talked about how Mexico messed up in a lot of ways, how the U.S. messed up a lot of ways. He was very mutual in the way he shared out the sort of the roasts on both sides. So,
That's always good.
It was valuable to see it from his perspective. And he was a really good professor. And the other professor that I had, she was really good too. But I learned more about like art and culture and the history of the civilization of Mexican people, like where they came from, how they were descendants of the Aztec, the Mayans, and how Mayans and Aztecs were actually separate tribes or separate people for like 1,000 years separated from timeline and stuff. So it's really crazy to actually like learn all that stuff that you never learned in our history classes from their perspective, of course. Yeah, I'd agree 100%.
Yeah, very cool. So before you went abroad, what were you kind of expecting? So I guess you can consider like either trip, but
I mean, for the first one, I expected to be in this like tropical paradise, and it was for the most part. I was in the valley of San Jose. It didn't rain that much, but the clouds kept it really like, I don't know, just temperate feeling, but it was still like, it still like felt like 78 or 80 degrees on cloudy, partly cloudy. It was just perfect. I didn't really have any expectations. I knew that I was going to struggle a little bit with my Spanish, but I wasn't stressing about it. Now, when I went to Mexico, I was expecting a hotter, more dry climate. Like I was more prepared for sort of Costa Rica is probably doing better. They don't have as much GDP as Mexico, but they're doing better overall economically. And so when I went to Mexico, I kind of expected to be sort of in this more impoverished state, which Oaxaca is one of the poorest states in Mexico. Don't get me wrong on that, but like water availability is one thing you have to worry about. People have to have their water refilled, and you can't drink out of the tap. You only use the tap sort of to like shower and wash your hands and stuff. And like there was one day I ran out of water in the middle of my shower simply because this little switch got flicked off or something outside, and I didn't know how to fix it. But our house mom always taught us to like, when we first got there, to like fill a bucket of water when you first get in before you start showering in case it runs out. So you can use that bucket to sort of wash the rest of the soap and stuff off you if you have to. And I had to do that one time. I had to use a bucket. But yeah, so I didn't really have much expectations besides having fun going when I went to Costa Rica. And the second time I was more about business when I went to Mexico. I was kind of like, okay, I'm expecting a language intensive sort of experience here. I just want to like have as much fun as possible, but at the same time, like I know that this is probably going to be a little more limiting in terms of free range. Like because I was there for 1 month compared to 3 months,
Yeah.
So, that was really, I didn't really go in with any negative or positive expectations. I try to like eliminate expectations so that way I don't get surprised by anything or I'm not disappointed in anything, It's good to just keep a clear head before you go and to stay positive and to work through the problems as they happen, not to worry as if they're going to happen every single second you're turning the corner,
Yeah, I think, and you might remember this, I don't know if they did it at your orientation, but one of the things that they talk about is kind of like, it's like this graph and it's like emotions during study abroad. And so there's like some spikes and then there's like some really low valleys just because it's so exciting and you're so happy to be there and everything's new. but then maybe it wears off and you get really homesick, but then you have this really cool experience and then it like levels off or whatever. So it's definitely, I think keeping a positive outlook is important as well, because you're going to be up and down.
The orientation was valuable when it talked about culture shock, because although I didn't experience culture shock, when I went with my fiance, which was then my girlfriend, she experienced culture shock on a whole new level, something I was not ready to deal with or really help. Like, I wasn't prepared to help her with. It was bad, you know, like some people feel it and they get really homesick and they want to, like, you know, they want to be home now. But at the same time, I was like, hey, like, we're here for a couple of days already. Like, come on. So she just wrote it out, and then eventually it's like her favorite place in the world.
Mm-hmm.
She loves Costa Rica. She loves Santa Teresa, the beach town. It's a surf town. Like, she knows Costa Rica more than I do probably. So it's one of those things, like, culture shock is going to happen to certain individuals who are prone to it, and to others it's not going to happen at all. To those who are not affected by it, I can sort of give advice. Don't feel like you should be affected by it. Just keep riding the wave and playing it by ear and stuff. But the people who are affected by it, you got to, like, realize that there are probably dozens of other kids in your program that are going through the same exact thing. They might not be taking it as harsh or as lightly, I guess, as you are, but there's resources for you there. And you still have, like, things like FaceTime and stuff. Like, you can FaceTime home and stuff if you have Wi-Fi and stuff. So, or even if you have cell plan and stuff. So there's, like, plenty of options for you to get over the culture shock without having to come back home and give up on the program. But that is, I guess, an expectation you could have, is just expect to be sort of caught off guard.
Of your comfort zone. Yeah.
I mean, depending on where you go, like, Latin America is not that much different from the U.S. overall. I mean, Catholicism is, like, the reigning sort of Christianity, like, religion and stuff. So, like, families, like, big bond stuff. So there's not really a big difference between the two cultures, except our political atmosphere in the U.S. really does influence a lot of your interactions daily. Like, you know, you don't want to go around talking about, you know, how you might support Trump or hate Trump for this or that. You know, it's just probably best to keep politics out of it all.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And also something that I think is good to consider, a big part of my decision process in, like, going on exchange was, like, when else am I going to be able to do this? Like, when I have a job or a family, this may not be as available. And then when I got there and was feeling kind of homesick, a lot of times I would just think, you know, this program only lasts, 4 months or whatever, which seems like a long time. But then after that, who knows when I'll get to come back. So yeah, I definitely think it's a day by day process and your feelings will change or whatever. But, so it sounds like you had a really positive experience living with a host family.
Yeah.
You did that both times?
Yes.
So who did you have, did any other exchange students live with you in the host family, or was it just
I always
you
had
and the host? Okay, cool.
So the
That's
way it
nice.
was with AIFS was, when I went to Costa Rica, I was in this it was a pretty big house, substantial house for the neighborhood, the barrio where we were, and had an upper floor. I was on the second floor. Just down the hallway from me was a roommate that I had. His name was Matias. He had been with AIFS already for like 3 months and extended his stay for another semester. So, like, he was from the University of Wisconsin, Madison. Then downstairs, I had a guy named Daniel. He was from Washington, Eastern Washington University or something like that. He was really cool. And then I had this guy who wasn't even in our program, who was from Australia, who was in a different program. But because our house mom did multiple programs, we had, kids from all over the place. And this kid, his name was Tom. He was a really cool guy. It was really cool getting to meet Australians. There's a ton of Australians in Costa Rica, everywhere. Canadians, Australians, everywhere. French, too.
Wow.
And when I went to Mexico, there was like sort of a mishap with the day that my roommate left the U.S. It kind of like took him a couple days to get there. But once he got there, like, I had a roommate. He was from OKCU. So he went to Oklahoma City University. Cool. And he played the flute. Like, it was just the people you meet abroad. He was really good. Like, I mean, really good. And he's this big dude who you thought would play like O-line or D-line in football. he like also did cheer. So he wasn't just a flute player. He
Wow.
cheered. He was very good at that. Could do a back tuck, splits, all kinds of stuff. It's crazy. So the people you meet, your roommates, are really cool. If you can do the homestay, I say do the homestay because your first meal of the day. If you don't eat breakfast, I don't really eat breakfast all the time either. But like a light bowl of fruit will help you start losing weight so much. Like I would always tell my house mom and house family, like I didn't really like breakfast, so I would always tell them like, hey, just like a big bowl of fruit will do me good for the
Be
morning.
fine. Yeah.
And the next thing I know, I like eating fruit bowls in the morning and stuff. So I'm healthier. I'm feeling better with the homestay family because they're cooking me home cooked meals every day, like once in the morning, and then your dinner is actually cooked for you too. But you can tell your home family, like, hey, on my homestay, like, hey, I'm going out tonight with Tom and Daniel. Matthias is going to stay back. I think he's going to have dinner with you, but we're going to go out for dinner. So don't cook extra food for us. And you know, or you could say, we're going to go out for something light, but we'll be back. Leave the beans on the stove. And she would, you know, like those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Just simple communication will like make your experience even better. But like, yeah, 2 meals cooked every day, the way they cook it and everything is like perfect.
Yeah.
It was a really good experience. The homestay is like, I'm going to always go homestay if I can, just because it just gives you that one extra link to the culture and everything.
Yeah, for sure. And I definitely think that, so I'm sure you felt the same way moving from a small town to like a big university, like OSU is pretty big. And so you're already being exposed to like a pretty diverse group of people, probably more people than you have been in the past. So I really liked that. And then even further exchanging somewhere not in Oklahoma, it was like a totally new world of people. And I also think it's unique to the types of people that would also want to study abroad. Like, don't you think that you kind of end up being with like-minded
Of course.
people? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, people who have like sort of this global perspective are the kind of people you're going to meet abroad. And it's really cool, especially out of the U.S., like going overseas, which overseas is still technically going to Hawaii, you know? It's kind of crazy. It's like its own little country, honestly, with how different it is from mainland. But at the same time, like, I agree 100%. Like, going abroad, you do meet these like-minded individuals, but you also meet people from like what I always thought was interesting when I went abroad was meeting people from different parts of the U.S. I never thought I had a Southern accent until I started talking to people from the Northeast, and they kept saying that I had like a Southern draw. But then there was like this girl from literally, I don't, Mississippi or Alabama. Like she was from like deep
The South. Yeah.
and she had a draw, like a Southern draw, and you could hear it in her voice. There was complete like transparent, like everybody could see the difference between us and her, but at the same time we were still like we had Southern accents. But the funny thing when you ask people where is Oklahoma on the map, and like you're like, do you call that South or do you call that Midwest or what do you call it? And they always are like, South, Midwest, I don't know, you know. So you meet people from all over the U.S. Costa Rica was cool because I met people from all over the world. I mean, like my best and most fun surf session I've ever had in my entire life was in Jaco, which is a beach town 2 hours south of San Jose. And I was out there for a whole set at sunset, and I probably caught like 10 waves. And I was out there with a French Canadian who spoke French and English. So I spoke English with him, but then there was another Frenchman who was from France, Paris or something like that, and he didn't speak any English whatsoever. But because I could speak Spanish, I was able to speak Spanish with him. So there's just those kind of cool connections that you're going to have simply by speaking another language with random people, random strangers you meet all over the world. It's so cool.
Yeah, that is super cool. I had a similar experience. Like, my roommates were from, 2 of them were from Nebraska and Iowa. So I was like, oh yeah, like we're all kind of from the same area. But there would be things that like they knew about that I'd never heard about. Like, what's it called? Some kind of snack that's like, a scotcheroo. It's like a Rice Krispie treat with peanut butter on it. I don't know, something like that. Anyway, they were talking about it and I had no idea what they were talking about. And they were like, wow, you are not from the Midwest. And they would make fun of me for saying like y'all or like
Yeah.
having a Southern accent. And I was like, you should meet people from my hometown if you think that I have a Southern accent. Like I know some real hillbillies that you need to connect with. But so
Oklahoma,
yeah.
we can all talk to a couple of individuals on Facebook that probably still have that can, attest to that.
Yeah, I was like, the fact that I don't have a dip in my mouth right now should let you know that I'm not I'm not really Southern. I'm not Southern where I come from. But okay, well, it looks like we're hitting like the 47-minute mark. So thank you for meeting with me. I really liked hearing about your experience. I have worked in the office for 2 years, but I've only met one other person that has studied abroad in Mexico. So I'm really excited to post this, and hopefully, especially now, the EU is totally just not accepting American travelers. So it's more important than ever that we get perspectives from different places. And
go to
like,
Central
I haven't, yeah.
yeah, no, for real.
Yeah.
Like, it's worth it. I mean, they're not going to let you travel to any state that's too dangerous on the State Department's warning level. And at the same time, just practice and exercise precaution wherever you go. Kind of always have that sort of observe, I don't know, this like sort of, you're very observative. You kind of, you see everything in your environment. You're kind
Your
of
surroundings.
you're well aware of your surroundings. You're well aware of the security situation and your personal security and the group security. I mean, there are things that happen, like one time in Mexico, there was a girl who got her phone taken from like 4 dudes who just bumped into her out of nowhere, like, so it was like a sort of snatch and grab scheme where like they bumped into her, made it seem sort of accidental, but then they took a phone out of her bag. Or there was a girl that got her phone taken in Costa Rica, like literally 100 yards away from the university, by somebody who pulled up behind her. So that kind of stuff happens. You just don't show wealth if you have it, in any way whatsoever. And then just be very cautious. I mean, like anywhere you go in the U.S., even I feel the same way going anywhere, wherever I go. I'm just kind of, always observant of my surroundings and stuff. So go to Central America, go to Latin America, learn Spanish, learn the cultures, learn the foods, learn everything, man. It's so fun. And yeah, with the warnings and the EU not accepting any tourists anytime soon, I really see that I can foresee actually a lot of people going to Costa Rica if they keep accepting tourists, because that's the hot spot in terms of, traveling and studying abroad. I would feel like Costa Rica, and then right behind that, if you could go to Colombia or Argentina would probably be next or something.
That'd be really cool. Yeah.
Argentina is like a little slice of Europe, honestly. There's such a high Italian and German population in Argentina and Uruguay.
Really?
So, yes,
I did not know that.
very, very influenced by Europe, especially after World War II. So many Europeans fled Europe to go to South America, especially Germans and Italians. So, yeah. Anyway, I appreciate you giving me the time for the interview and, wanting to look for more information. As a StratCom major in Mexico, worth it 100%. Anybody learning Spanish should go to a Spanish-speaking country south of the U.S., not east of the U.S.
Yeah.
Spain is just one of those places where it's like Europe. Like, you're going to be there. Like, think about it. If you really studied in Spain to learn Spanish, you're not going to be in Spain the entire time, because if you're there for a whole semester, you're going to go see England, you're going to go look at Italy, you're going to go look at France, you're going to go look everywhere you possibly can to, like, see it, so you're not actually stuck where it's only Spanish, where if you cross the border, the next state over, the next country over is going to only speak Spanish. So, I'd highly recommend Central and Latin America.
Okay, well, thanks. And I agree. I think it's nice to have a home base. Hawaii is actually the most isolated place on the planet. It's like 3,000 miles away from everything in every direction. So I think it's nice to be able to really be immersed where you are. Like, I'm all for side trips. I think that's fun, but it's nice. It would also be nice to really get to know the place that you're on exchange at. But
I had plenty of formative moments in my own head and just by myself, sort of taking in the moment and taking in like reality at the current time I was in, especially in Costa Rica, because I was doing a lot of meditation, a lot of yoga. There was like a yoga class at the university that I did twice a week for the whole time I was there. Like those experiences were really formative. Just being alone in my room, I can remember the way the wood creaked on the floor. I can remember how I would wind this little thing to open my window and look out and breathe in the air and see all the sheet metal everywhere, because like the roofs are sheet metal there, and just some nights it would rain, it would ping on the metal. Like I remember all of those sounds. I remember the horns honking at night and stuff. Like you just kind of become in tune with everything, and it's an experience that adds so much value to you as a future employee to somewhere, especially if they do business in Central or Latin America, if you can speak Spanish. But it's not just the Spanish speaking thing that comes into play. It's like, oh, you lived there for 3 months, so you know this place, you know that place, you know how the people sort of act and behave, you know what they talk about, and that kind of behavioral and sort of social understanding just adds so much more value to you as a person in the long run. So go abroad wherever you can go, but if you're learning Spanish, just go to Mexico or Costa Rica or somewhere like that.
All right. Well, I am excited to share this video, but thanks for meeting with me, and have a good rest of your day. Have a good weekend. It's Friday.
Take it easy. Nice talking to you.
You too. Bye.
Thank you guys for watching. I hope that you were intrigued. I hope that you learned something. I hope that maybe you laughed. I don't know. I can't remember if there was any jokes, but surely something. But I hope you guys enjoyed. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at OSU_study abroad and subscribe so that you don't miss another one of these interviews. All right, bye.